Come on in out of the cold. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Welcome to War Table Printing and Painting. My name's Jay, and I'm going to show how I did a filament upgrade to help my filament feed to my Neptune 2. I did use this a lot, and it's nice, but once it gets to the end of the roll will start to get really light, and once that happens, it'll start pulling at it, and it'll literally start raising it up off of it, and it'll just literally pull it like this and make it roll up off of there because it's not enough weight holding it down anymore. So I found this file on Thingiverse, which I'm going to put in the description, the link to it. You're going to have to print 3 parts to do this. It's not too bad. First, I wanted to pull out my filament because I'll have to have the filament out of there to do this. So we'll have to heat up the filament so we can remove it. And we'll give that a second here. There it goes. Get it up to 230. That's what I'm putting mine at to pull it. This is inland filament. It usually needs to be a little hotter, so I throw it all the way up to 230. Now, to pull it out, you'll want to make sure you depress the spring on your extruder so that it'll come loose. Otherwise, it won't. And just pull it out of there. Now, at the end, you'll want to see a little fat piece at the end, hopefully. That usually means you got all of it, like everything that was in there. That's usually where it was in the nozzle in there. So once you got it all cleared out of there with that pull, hopefully, even if it doesn't, usually it's gonna extrude it once you go to run the first print, or if you just do an extrude to get it. Now you're gonna have to take the top off to do this. Okay, now we got 4 bolts there, and there's 2 bolts that hold this on, and they're done with 2 different size Allen wrenches. And this is the littler Allen wrench, and then the other one's the bigger Allen wrench. And you're just gonna want to pop those off the top with those, pull that off there, and then the first piece you got to put on is this piece here, and you'll want to attach a Bowden tube connector to the end there. They'll just screw in there with a wrench. Just use a 10mm wrench. Those are usually 10mm. Don't try cranking it too hard. You'd probably crack this thing if you try to crank it too hard, but just as long as it's pretty much flush in there like that, you should be just fine. And it's going to go towards the side of the Z-rod, so just slide it in there. You'll make sure that its ends are real clean. Just get it on there good like that. Now we'll have to put on the top again, and that's pretty easy. You're just gonna set it back up there on top. Make sure you start your screws first. I like to look at them when I start them, so I'll raise it up a little bit and just make sure I see those starting. But you also got to be careful when you do that, because it can kind of get it to be a little off center or crooked at the top, so you'll want to lower it back down real good. And once you get that done, you'll be able to start the next part. Now you'll have to put on this little stopper on the top here. You've got to put it there between those 2 bolts, right there, and then twist it. And what I used to secure this all together with was just a paper clip. I just cut a big paper clip in half and then use that to secure that. You'll have to also put this back on here too, just so you kind of know where it's going to be at. Kind of size it up so those holes align. So I did that first, just so I'd know about where to have everything set at. Yep, them holes on the bottom there, and then just twist there, and it'll get it to catch and hold that piece on. Now we'll take our paper clips or whatever. You could probably use a screw or something like that too, or nail or something. But paperclip bends pretty easy, so. And I figure it's strong enough to hold this. I don't think it's going to be that much, and there's 2 of them, so if one were to break, I think I'd notice, and then I'd be able to fix it before there'd be a problem or anything. So this should do it. It's a little janky, but it'll work. So just do that on the one side, and then the other paper clip on the other side, and then bend it so that it's tight and gonna hold that in place so that it doesn't want to slide down on that shaft at all there. Pretty easy, not too hard. Simple mode. And then make sure you tighten this all the way down afterwards, because you don't want that coming loose either. And that should hold all this together now so that it doesn't, none of it come loose, if you've done it right. And like I said, it's pretty easy. That's the other piece you have to print though, is that topper piece there. And then the last piece we'll have to print is the piece that goes on top of the filament detector. And we're going to go down here to that now. Our filament runout detector box, whatever you want to call it, I guess. This part isn't too bad. When I printed this too, I printed it straight up and down with the where that Bowden part screws into it. I had that part flat on the bed, and then I had regular supports for the flat part that goes on top of it. So that held it up just fine, and it printed just fine like that. It said you could print it without, I don't know how you would print that without some kind of supports. And like I said, if you print it with those supports came off real easy, and it fit this thing just perfect without hardly doing anything. I didn't really have to do anything to it. I didn't have to file anything on it or sand anything on it. Now these are the 2 screws you'll have to remove from this to get this thing on here. And there's 2 spacers underneath that'll have to stay on there too, because that keeps it spaced just right so that filament runs into that other Bowden tube connection. Alright. Now, what we're going to do here is just sit this thing on top of it like that. You should be able to see that it's where that light will be able to show through too, in the middle there, and then push your screws back through this, and it's plenty of screws still, so you don't have to worry about it not being enough to hold it on here. It's going to hold it on just fine. Just make sure you get it back into those spacers so that it's all spaced right, and then get your screws started even. That's always important too, is to make sure your screws are starting even. If they start uneven, you're going to have problems later if you have to take this thing back apart. If you screw them in crooked or something. I always try to make sure they feel like they're going in nice and easy. If anything ever feels like it's pushing back on me, I stop immediately, back out, and then, just start a new angle or something to see if I can't get it to feel right. And then I'll screw it in all the way there. After we tighten these up, we'll have to hook up the Bowden tube. Alright. Just tighten them up. But don't, you don't want to go too crazy tight with these. They're just little tiny screws, so you can probably strip them easy, or whatever they're going into pretty easy if you're not careful. So just, that's a good way to do it right there so that it's not too tight. You wouldn't want to use the long end of it and use all that torque on them. You use the little short end. It helps make it a little better anyway. Alright, now we're going to attach our Bowden tube. Just stick it in there, don't shove it too far. Okay, and then we got to attach the top end to the top piece. Let's go up here. Pop it in there. Up a little higher. There we go. Now, if you do end up shoving it through a little too far, like this here. Yep. Now, here's a trick. If you didn't know it, you push the piece there on the bottom up against that other, and then you shove it back, and wrench. Yep, it'll go through. Now there's little claws that clamp on in there, and that's why you put this little holder on here, and that keeps that from ever coming loose. And those claws dig into that tube and hold it in place. We're going to put another one of those little clips on the bottom too, to make sure this piece stays where it's supposed to. Snap it in there, and you're pretty much all done with the build there. Now all you have to do is get your filament in, and this can be a little tricky too. I found just even without this setup, but with it seems a little more tricky because you still got to push it through again. So I always cut the end of my filament like at an angle so that it makes it a little easier for it to poke through, usually, if it has to poke through anywhere. So to do this, you'll want to shove it down through this right here. All right. And then again, you'll have to compress the spring on your drive and get that to let this through. Now, sometimes it can be a little tricky, and it'll want to push up against the other Bowden tube on the other side. So usually, if I'm having any trouble, I'll just unscrew this Bowden tube here, and that way it'll make this a little easier to do. So once that's unscrewed, push through your filament there, and then attach it by sliding that over that, and then re-screwing that in all the way and tightening it back up with a wrench. And once it's good and tight again, you can go ahead and shove the filament all the way in. There we go. And then we'll push our filament through here. Hold down don't forget to hold down that, or it won't push through. And I like these white ones, Bowden tubes, because you can see the filament in there as it goes through, so you know where it's at. It's kind of a nice feature of it. And then here's a benchy I printed afterwards. To kind of more see than the benchy itself is just how it's pulling at the wheel, and everything seems to be going well. So again, if anything here helped you or you like this channel, please like and subscribe. There should be a lot more content coming, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much. God bless, and have a great day.